Hi, this is Gabe from FluentForever.com. In this video, we're going to talk about Hungarian vowels. Now, Hungarian vowels can be a bit tricky. There are a lot of them. But the better your ears get, the simpler they'll be to keep track of, and the better you'll produce them. My main goal here is for you to get familiar with the IPA symbols for these vowels, and to get a rough sense of how they fit in your mouth. We'll be talking a little bit about tongue placement, and so just to give you a rough sense of that, try this. Compare e, and a in English, as in seat, set, and sat. You'll notice that your tongue starts up high, e, goes to the middle of your mouth, and then goes down to a. So your tongue can go up and down. It can also go forward and back. Compare as in bet and as in but. Your tongue goes forward for and pulls back for bet, but. Now, if you'd like a much more in-depth discussion about vowel formation, check out some of the videos linked below. But for the beginning, that's about all we're going to need. So with that out of the way, let's get to Hungarian. We'll start with three vowels that you're relatively familiar with already.
E, and U.
The only thing really new here are these symbols.
Uses this big curly E symbol. It's effectively the same vowel you'd use in English words like red and elephant, and shows up in Hungarian words like elektromosság and teve.
Hungarian spells it using the letter E.
E uses a lowercase I. It shows up in English words like see and flee, and in Hungarian words like ír and ing.
Now, if you look at the IPA of these last two Hungarian words, you may notice that colon symbol we talked about last time. That's the one that made consonants extra long. Well, Hungarian doesn't just have extra long consonants. They have extra long vowels as well.
In fact, every Hungarian vowel comes in a long version like E and a short version like E.
Here's some examples for this particular vowel pair.
This is írt with a short E, and this is írt with a long E. Írt, írt. This is terit with a short E, and this is terit with a long E. Terit, terit.
Notice that in the Hungarian spelling, there's a diagonal accent over the long vowel. Hungarian spelling is really straightforward, especially in respect to long and short vowels. All long vowels will have an accent of that particular type. Ultimately, learning to hear the difference between long and short vowels in Hungarian is one of the most important challenges in learning Hungarian pronunciation. Let's move on to our next vowel.
U, as in ugrik or út.
This shows up in IPA as a lowercase u. It should sound relatively familiar, as in English's shoot or sue. Just be careful with it. In most accents of English, we actually start words like shoot with a different vowel. The same vowel as in foot. So we go foot, shoe, shoe.
In Hungarian, we go straight to U. So instead of shoot, it's shoot. And instead of sue, it's sue. Once again, we have short U and long U. To compare those directly, you can use uira and uira. Uira, uira.
Moving on.
Let's look at a, e, and o. A as in al or hat is pretty close to a as in dog or father.
The Hungarian version a is a little more forward in your mouth than the American ah. So your tongue is a little more towards the front of your mouth, about halfway towards the American a vowel.
We can compare Hungarian's hat to English's hot and hat. So there's hot, hat, hat. You'll note that the Hungarian a vowel is a long vowel.
We'll talk about the short version in a little bit.
Our next vowel is the long e, as in ale or egg.
This one is halfway in between e and e. Remember how e was high up in your mouth and e was in the middle of your mouth?
Well, e is right in between those two.
We've actually already learned the short version of this vowel, but it was made in a different spot in your mouth.
That was as in elektromosság.
Hungarian's long and short vowel pairs are sometimes made in basically the same spot in your mouth.
Like e and u and u.
And sometimes they're made in slightly different spots in your mouth.
Like and e. Our next vowel is going to be o, as in olvas or as in toe. O sounds a lot like the American English o, as in no.
The biggest difference is that the American English variant is actually two vowels. You start at o and you end at u. O. The Hungarian version stays put. There's no at the end.
So to compare Hungarian to English, you have no and no. And if you want to compare the long and short versions of this vowel, O versus O, You can try ont and ont, or koros and koros. Ont, ont. Koros, koros.
Now come a bunch of rounded vowels. Hungarian makes a few vowels by taking a tongue position you already know, say E, with your tongue all the way up and in the front, and then rounding your lips without moving the tongue.
So if you take E as in eat and round your lips without moving your tongue, it should stay near the front as high as it can go. You get U as in ut, or U as in twos. E-U, E-U, ut, twos.
If you want some help comparing the long and short versions of this vowel,
you can try fuzet and fuzet. Fuzet, fuzet.
This is actually a nice spot to point out a neat thing in Hungarian spelling. Hungarian uses a U with umlauts, just like German does, to make this U sound. But since there's a long and a short version of this vowel, and that needs to be indicated in the spelling in some way, Hungarian uses these neat diagonal umlauts to show that.
U.
You can also do this rounding thing with the American vowel ah, as in father or hot.
Keep your tongue still in the bottom front of your mouth, ah, and round your lips. Ah, hot, alma. Just to compare them directly, English has hot, Hungarian has hot. Hot, hot. This ah sound is the short version of Hungarian's ah. Ah, hot, hat.
Our very last rounded vowel is going to be
as in öl or lö.
This vowel is based on the tongue position of Hungarian's e.
Your tongue should be in the front, fairly high up. E. And then you round your lips. E, öl, lö. To compare the short and long versions of this vowel, you compare ut and öt. Ut, öt.
And you notice again these neat diagonal umlauts on the long ö. We've now finished all of the vowels, and there's one last topic I want to cover here before we review, and that's called vowel harmony. Hungarian has a really interesting relationship between its grammar and its phonetics. You see, Hungarian's grammar is largely based on suffixes.
One example would be the suffix on. Here's hold, moon, and here's holdon, on the moon.
This on thing at the end of holdon, that means roughly the same thing as the English preposition on.
It's the same ending you'll find on hazon or kolapon.
But that's not the only version of that suffix.
There's also n as in yellen or heyen, and there's also un as in kunyvön or tuzön.
You're going to choose which version of that suffix to use.
On, n, or un.
Based largely upon the vowels of the word you're modifying. The idea behind vowel harmony is that you're trying to be as systematically lazy as possible with your mouth. In our first example, hold, for instance, if you wanted to add a suffix and at the same time move your tongue as little as possible, then you just stick with the suffix that uses the same vowel.
Holdon. Try to say something like holden or holdun. It's too much motion with your mouth, so you'll stick with holdon. Same thing with something like tuzön.
Now the vowels aren't the same, but
when you say tuz, your tongue is at the front of your mouth and your lips are round. U.
And if we look at our three options,
on, en, and un,
we only have one that's near the front of your mouth and rounded.
And that's un, so we say tuzön.
For the purposes of Hungarian vowel harmony, vowels fall into three categories. There's one big category of back vowels. These are vowels made with your tongue sitting near the back of your mouth.
O, a, o, u, and u. All of these vowels will tend to take endings like on.
And then there are two smaller categories for front vowels. These are vowels made with your tongue towards the front of your mouth. There's the front unrounded category, where your lips are not rounded.
That's e, e, e. All of these vowels will tend to take endings like n.
And then there's the front rounded category, where your lips are rounded.
U, and u. All of these vowels will tend to take endings like un.
One of the abilities you'll want to pick up as early as possible in Hungarian is the ability to quickly sort a word into one of those three categories. And since those categories are generally based on where the vowels are articulated within your mouth, it's not a bad thing to be aware of when you're just starting out with pronunciation. Since we're already pretty far down this vowel harmony rabbit hole, I'll go the rest of the way and show you the basic sorting process that you'll want to learn. You want to know which vowels fall into which category. Next, you look at your word. If all the vowels fall into one of those categories, back, front unrounded, or front rounded, then the word's generally going to be in that category. Pretty straightforward. Now, if a word has vowels in more than one category, then you have to know a little bit more about your word, namely whether that word is actually just two words stuck together, like Spider-Man, or if it's one long word, like Magneto. If it's two words stuck together, then just pay attention to the last word. For Spider-Man, for instance, that would be man, and this ah sound, that puts that in the back vowel category. But if it's just one long word with vowels of more than one category, then first you're going to check to see if it has any back vowels at all. If it does, then it's generally going to be a back vowel word. Back vowels kind of trump everything else. But if not, then it's going to be a front vowel word. And then you're going to look at the last vowel in that word, and that will determine whether it's front unrounded or front rounded.
So, if you have a word like konális,
then you have a back vowel in there, and so back vowels win. It's a back vowel word.
You'd say konálison. If you have a word like retikül,
then you're looking at a bunch of front vowels ending in a rounded front vowel, and so it falls into the front rounded category.
You'd say retikülön.
Since this is a real spoken language, there are some exceptions and words that don't follow the rules, but all in all, this is the basic sorting process you should eventually pick up, and it's a really useful one to know. If you end up using my Hungarian pronunciation trainer, I'll be including a Vowel Harmony trainer in there as well, just to help you memorize this stuff since it's so important. And with that said, we can review. We began with three familiar sounding vowels.
There was e as in elektromosság, then there was short I as in ing, and long I as in ír. Then we went to short U as in ugrik, and long U as in út.
The big thing to remember here is that to make sure you're only saying one vowel, oo, instead of a mix of vowels like oo.
Our next vowel was the long a as in al. This was an a sound with the tongue position between a and a. A. Then there was long e as in el.
This one had a tongue position in between I and e.
Then we had a short o as in olvas and a long o as in tó.
These were in roughly the same spot as the first half of English's o.
O.
Then we came to the rounded vowels. There was the rounded version of I,
the short u as in ut, and the long u as in tús.
There was the rounded version of ah,
the short a as in hot, and last, the rounded versions of a, the short ö as in öl, and the long ö as in lö.
Finally, we ran through vowel harmony and talked about how Hungarian grammar is based upon suffixes, which tend to have different versions depending upon which vowels are in the base words. We talked about three main categories of vowels. There were the back vowels,
a, o, u, and u.
The front unrounded vowels,
I, e, and e.
And then the front rounded vowels,
ö, u, and u.
And then we talked about the basic process you'll use to decide if a whole word is a back vowel word, a front unrounded word, or a front rounded word. If all the word's vowels fall into one of those three categories, then the word is generally in that category. But when a word has vowels in two categories, then you check to see whether it's a compound word, two words stuck together. In a case like that, you'll pay attention only to the very last word. Or if, on the other hand, it's one big word, then you generally count it as a back vowel word if it has any back vowels at all, a front unrounded vowel word if it's a combination of various front vowels that ends in an unrounded front vowel, and you count it as a front rounded vowel word if it's a combination of various front vowels that ends in a rounded front vowel. With that, we are done with all the sounds of Hungarian, and we are even done discussing vowel harmony. Next up, a small handful of spelling rules.